Welcome back, everyone. Well, I was hoping I was going to have an order of steel by today, so I have a tendency not to buy steel in the area just because I haven't found a local steel yard that actually stocks things. Usually I have to place an order even from them. So anyway, my plan was to continue working on the propane mounts down in here. So this is where the other half of the air conditioning unit used to be. You'll see that video coming up soon, I hope, as soon as the rest of the materials arrive. But this is where the propane is going to go now. This will be right underneath where the bathroom is and the incinerating toilet. But needless to say, I don't have the appropriate supplies to make that work. So I'm going to work on a few other things today. Sorry about the sunlight. There we go. So up here, I have not yet swapped out or covered up the front flasher lights. I took these down last night. They came down a lot easier than the rear lights. Apparently there's nowhere near as much rust on these. But I still need to do a little grinding and clean up a couple areas where I had to drill out the screws. But what I've got is a set of deletes that have recessed spotlights in them. So I'm going to put them in up here. Now as you notice, and I'll get up a little closer here soon, this particular bus has a lot of extra material, a lot of extra sheet metal up in there than some of the older ones might. So if you're lucky enough to have a bus that has a big open hole in the middle of that, you may not have to do what I'm about to. But if you have one more like this one, then I'm going to have to remove some steel in order to get everything to fit. So let me get things set up and we'll see what we can do. I went ahead and pulled the lights out of both of these. I'm not entirely sure if they're entirely identical. Let's find out, actually. So, in my case, yes, these are exactly identical. So, if you end up buying these, hopefully yours are as well. So I should be able to use just one of them as a template. So what I need to do, I'm going to take this up on the bus. Okay, so right up here, and make sure I can see what you see. So obviously these are where my lights were. You can see some overspray from where I sprayed the lights to make sure they weren't as visible as they had been previously. So I need to get all these cleaned up, little places where I've got leftover pieces of screw and some extra gasket material and stuff like that. But once that's done, then I can take this and set it up on here. Just kind of center it underneath that brow, which I'm going to keep, and make sure that I cut out whatever is necessary. Now obviously, in this case, I'm not planning on running the screws that hold the lights in through into the sheet metal. You certainly could. But I'm planning on cutting out around them. So what I'm going to do is put a dot with my marker in each of these screw holes around the square, and then draw the top and bottom lines, so that way I can tell exactly what I need to cut out of here. So we'll take care of that and show you what it looks like. There we are. So, just by eyeing it, I centered this up underneath that brow. Now obviously if you're going to take that cover off, then you wouldn't necessarily need to be this close, and it might take a little bit more time just trying to figure it out. You can align it down here along this lower edge. Actually, now that I look at that, that might not be exactly straight, so I'll do another attempt at this. So, plan will be, I'm going to draw across the top, I'm going to draw across the bottom, and then I'm going to mark all the holes around here. So that way I can create rectangles to tell me exactly what to cut out. I'm also going to mark the outer screw holes that will be riveted in. Now you could most certainly just cut out the squares that you see and then drill out the holes around it and use the screws that hold the lights in place as a secondary method of holding this piece in. And maybe I'm going to regret what I'm about to do, we'll see. But I know a lot of buses do have just a big open hole in the middle here, so they wouldn't have that option at all. So I guess we'll find out if this is going to be a good choice or not. I can always pull this off and weld in a new sheet of material behind it. Let's see what we get. So hopefully you can see this, but here we have one of our rectangles. You can see the marked screw holes up inside there. There's one, and there's the other right there. So obviously I just needed to get this out far enough to clear the screw holes, and because I drew this on the inside of where the metal rectangle was, I'm going to cut on the outside of this line to make sure that I've got enough room to clear everything. So I've got 2 rectangles to cut. So in this case, because it's going to be covered by a piece of sheet metal, it isn't necessarily important that I get the lines exactly where I want them, as long as they're big enough to clear what's going in their place. So I'm going to get these cut out, and we'll give it a trial fit. There we are. So as you can see right through the screw holes on both sides. Now that side I'm kind of covering up, but I now have an open space, so I need to do a little priming just to get everything cleared up. And as you can tell, I'm lined up on my outer screw holes as well. So that's exactly where it's going to go. I need to do a little drilling around the edges here, get some paint on it, and I'm ready to put this in place. Always remember, pay attention to what's behind here. So the majority of this wiring harness was plenty far back that it wasn't an issue. This one here, I did catch with my cutoff wheel. Now thankfully, this particular wire was part of the harness that went to the camera system, which I won't be using anymore anyway, so it didn't matter, I'll be taking that out. But pay attention, and it's better to know what's back there. Try not to cut too deep when you're going through this process. Here's the other side drawn and ready to cut. Got all my outer holes marked. You can see over on this side, primed, ready for paint. So we'll get these cut out of here and keep working. Almost there. Got 1 coat of final paint on here. Now, yes, there are drips right there, right there. This isn't necessarily final. I'm just trying to get some covering on here. I'm going to sand down around it and repaint it with a proper color by the time things are all said and done. So all the drips you see, like down along this edge here, those will all be cleaned up. Basically, just want to get some covering on it. Over here on this side, we are all ready to go. So you can see that I did some damage to the insulation behind it. That said, as is true for all of the high-intensity LEDs, these do really require some air movement behind them in order to keep them cool. Now I'm going to be taking that inner panel out and removing, wow, if I could speak today, removing all this insulation. So for those of you who are going to leave the inner panel in your bus, I would recommend pulling this insulation out through the holes, or at least pushing it out of the way, just so you can get a little bit of convection going behind these lights, just to keep them from overheating on you when you use them. So we'll get this one painted up and get going on putting the panels in place. Alright, I'm ready to install the first one. I know you can't see that with the backlighting, but I've got all the paint on this side, one over here. I have 1 more coat of paint to put on there before I put it up. So just like with the rears, I'm going to put 2 beads of sealant around the back of the plate. For the difference on this one, I'm also going to put a bead of sealant around those holes up there that I cut. So here are these. I drilled out the holes to match the rivets I'm putting in. The holes were a little bit small for self-tapping screws. So we'll flip these over, get some sealant on one of them, and then get working on the front. As before, I'm using ProFlex RV. Now it appears I need to get the plug out of this one. My last tube of this stuff did partially solidify between the last use and this one, so I would recommend, if it's going to be any length of time between applications, That would get yourself a few extra tubes to work with. So remember, for my bus, I don't have to worry about big holes in the middle here, so I can be a little more liberal with the sealant. Obviously, if you do have a big hole, make sure that wherever you put this stuff, you're going to end up with a good seal around it. Make sure it doesn't just end up on air. There we go, there's that part. Up here, I'm just going to put a line of sealant around the openings. I'm purposely keeping it a little bit further back. Again, I know I've got good material all the way up through here, so it shouldn't be a big deal. There we go. So those are ready to go. What I'll do, I'll go grab the plate. Now you notice I'm not putting the lights in with it just yet. I can add those in later. It's a lot easier to maneuver just the plate. So I'm going to go grab that, bring it back up here, and get a couple of rivets through the upper holes and start putting it in position. One down, one to go. I do want to take this time to remind you all that these rivets that I'm using are slightly larger than 1/4 inch. So I drilled them out to 1/4, then went to put the rivets in and realized that, yep, sure enough, they were the wrong size. It's a lot easier to drill your holes out when you don't have sealant on here, so even though I didn't do it this time because I thought I remembered what I was doing, it's a good idea to test all your holes before you put sealant on here. There we go. There's that. Let's go prep the top of the bus and we'll get this one in place. I swear I didn't have too much caffeine today. Alright, get this one put up. Alright, here we stand. So, no more lights up top. Hopefully you can see we got both plates put in. I did leave the brow bars on this time, or the brow plates, whatever you want to call them. So both are in position. Let me get up there on the hood so I can show you a little more closely. Here's this one. So this is a standard setup for regular square dually type LED lights. I'm not sure what the quality is regarding the ones that came with this, and I won't be connecting them to relays right away, so I'll have to show you later what it looks like when they're turned on. Here's the other one. So we're all prepped and ready to go here. Did a little cleanup around the edges. I know there's still some here I could take off if I wanted to. But that doesn't bother me too much. This is going to be far enough away from everything that I'm not too worried about it. So it's watertight, and that's what really matters. The lights all have gaskets, so all I have left is to get up here and put in a few screws and we're finished. So here we are. Front upper light delete on a Bluebird school bus using Schooly.com LED spotlight delete plates. Obviously you could certainly do this on your own. There's nothing overly complicated about it. The thing that's nice about using their plates is obviously all the holes line up, or at least all the holes are evenly spaced around it. So you could certainly do that. It wouldn't be terribly difficult, but it does save some time not having to mark everything out and triangulate. If you happen to have a plasma table, which I know some people out there do, one of these days I might get one, probably makes something like this really simple. But for the time being, I figured it was worth my time to spend the money on it. There we are. I'll show you when I get the lights in here in a little bit. Here we are. So, 2 spotlights on each side. I'm realizing it's a good thing when the buses actually do this with LED lighting, they don't look like this. Because definitely, this could theoretically still look like the upper lights are still here. So these are standard spotlights. I believe it's white light. So I'll connect those to a switch in the driver's section so I can make use of them later. But here's where we look. And I know the sun's right behind it, but maybe you can see it. There's how it looks up there. So, all told, it did take most of a day to make this happen. Between drilling out the screws on the old lights, pulling them down out of there, marking and cutting the holes for the new ones, and then drilling everything out, getting it prepped for rivets, getting it sealed, and getting everything back up in there. It was a good day's work. I would say if you were good at it, if you had maybe a helper to help move some parts around for you instead of climbing up and down on the hood like I did all day, you could probably get it done in an hour or two, maybe 2. And if it was a newer bus that didn't require drilling and grinding to get the old stuff off of there, it would probably be a little bit faster yet. But needless to say, there we are. I think it's a good upgrade. I do like it. And I'll see you over the next horizon.